Hello and welcome to StroongeCast episode 86.
Part 2, the middle years.
Which will include boarding school and college and my uni, I think.
Well, no, that comes after.
Does it?
That's
How does
part
that work
3.
then?
So the middle years
Yes.
are your boarding school.
Oh, that.
And then the third part
Uh-huh.
is like the older you becoming an adult. That's the point.
Is that how you want to do it?
Well, yeah, because otherwise what's part 3?
I thought that would actually be post-uni and then like into living alone and meeting you.
No, because it's more about your learning life.
I see.
Like how you were taught, how you learnt those skills and stuff like that. Not
Right.
just life in general, I guess.
Got it. Well, I clearly hadn't learnt my lines, so there we go. It's proof, isn't it? It's Thursday.
Yeah.
We're both tired, but it's all right.
Yeah.
Before we fall asleep at the mics, how's your week been?
It's fine. Nothing crazy has happened. Nothing major.
No?
Just the usual average week.
Yeah, it's been quieter than last week for you, hasn't it?
Yeah.
But being the foodie that I am, and I know Maria's listening. Maria's always listening.
Mm-hmm.
The Filipino dish. Tell us about that. That was stunning.
Yeah. If I can remember.
And you
what
got
it was
high praise for that.
called. I did, from Jake's girlfriend, who is Filipino. I think it was called Tocino.
It had a strange name, but we weren't sure.
I think it was that. It's basically like marinated strips of pork, like pork shoulder,
Mm-hmm.
with rice.
They were good.
And then you serve it with like a fried egg, which obviously I didn't do for you.
Yep.
And I didn't do for Jake because he doesn't like eggs. But yeah, she was really surprised and was like, "Oh, it's just like what my mum makes."
Higher praise you could not have.
Exactly. So that was really, really nice.
Absolutely wonderful.
And everyone enjoyed it. Alice ate it. You guys all ate it.
Definitely did.
Yeah, it was good.
My week, though, was interesting. It's been busy
Mm-hmm.
because I have been helping Ed on an app for him. He's been making this wonderful audio app, which is great because there's nothing quite like it that I've ever used in all the years I've been using this kind of thing. It's for listening to audio remotely from one machine to another. There's always been ways to do that part, but the way that he's implemented it is really good
Yeah.
because you can't listen to, let's say, like a sound card or something on your computer normally without a mixer. So if you want to listen to the output of that sound card, then you have to plug it into something else. This app bypasses that and allows you to select an output. So it'd be like if you could listen to your AirPods without them being in your ears. It's hard to explain, but it helps because when I'm upstairs, I can listen to my music down here without having to actually play the music from upstairs. I just control it.
I see.
So all the stuff, like when we're away on holiday, on the cruise or whatever, all the stuff that's back home that I may not have on the laptop, I can now play over the Tinternet, and it's incredible. And it works really, really well, like extremely well. And then my own app, which is extremely exciting for me because I got sick of all these inaccessible fan control apps. There are 2 apps that most people recommend, if you can see, for controlling the fan speed of your computer and for seeing, temps and stuff in real time, temperatures. And those are called Fan Control and MSI Afterburner. Both of these are inaccessible to screen readers for the most part. So I and Codex have been building this accessible app, and I was going to tell you before, but I thought I'd wait. I just looked at the download stats, right? For one of the builds, which is the second to last most recent one, has been downloaded already in 2 days over 400 times.
Wow.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
So it's making roads around the VI community, and that's exciting. I mentioned it on social and on Facebook, and I've just, before the podcast aired, before we recorded actually, pushed 1.3 out. No one but you knows it. Of course, it's Friday by the time you hear this, so a lot of people will. And there's an auto updater, so if anybody's running the previous version, they'll get it anyway. But this has hit really hard, and it's been really well received, and it was actually very nice. So I'm feeling quite positive about that. And that's consumed me for a bit.
Kept you busy.
Kept me very busy. And yesterday you helped me out with my computer by turning down the noisy fans.
Yeah.
And we went through the BIOS, which is a very scary and intimidating place, isn't it?
There's just a lot of weird words.
Like
and
VOOP.
Combinations of letters and yeah, it's strange.
Random utterances.
For someone who is not adept in that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
and I just always
done
worry
good.
that I'm going to read you the wrong thing and then get you to do something that's going to break stuff.
Well, luckily there is a discard, isn't there? We found out nearly the hard way.
Yeah.
But yeah, this has been great. I've been enjoying my week with my new computer, learning it and learning its quirks and foibles. Every new machine that you get has something about it that you have to go, okay, that's how you work around this. Some of them you learn very quickly and some of them take ages. But when you know, you know. So I've gotten to the point of not just liking it now because it was noisy to loving it now that it isn't. And it's still fast. So yeah, happy me. Oh boy, crazy week. Next week though, I think, and I'm not certain, but I think I'm going back to the piano shop and I have a really interesting presentation to give about music and music industry and such, which by the time we get to record next week's, I will have done so I can tell you how it went. But yeah. But apart from that, have you got answers for us? Actually, we know someone in the comments does, but what's the quiz?
Yeah, a couple of people answered it.
Nice.
Which was great. And we'll come to whether they got it right or not. The actual question was, composed of approximately 60% fat, which of the following is the fattiest organ in the human body? Is it the brain, the heart, or the liver?
Right.
What did you think?
I thought it was, well, I don't know why I thought it was the brain, because the brain isn't fat, but it's not. Can't be.
It is.
Is it really?
It's the brain. See, I think you would initially think it would be the liver, because a lot of people talk about like fatty liver.
Yeah.
But it is the brain.
Okay.
So if you got that right, well done. The question for this week is, unofficially, what is the most expensive number plate ever sold in the UK?
Oh yeah, we saw this.
Mm-hmm.
It was very interesting.
Yeah.
And we had to look it up. Right.
So if we crack on with the comments then.
Yeah.
So we'll start with Marie.
Hello again.
One of our lovely members. So obviously you get it early if you remember. So her comments were first. So
Ladies first.
She says, for the quiz question, I think it's the brain. I feel like I read that somewhere, but I don't remember. So you were correct. Well done.
Okay.
She then says, this episode made me feel so nostalgic. I would love to talk about my early memories too. Gosh, there are even certain smells that bring me way back to when I was very, very small. There is one particular perfume that reminds me of one person and will always remind me of that one person. It frustrates the crap out of me that I only remember her first name and I never learned her last name. But I'm sure I could find her based on where she used to work. I hope she's still alive. But if she's not, I will always have the memories of her. And for those interested, the perfume that reminds me of her is Red Door by Elizabeth Arden.
Sounds nice. I don't know what it is.
I've never smelt that, I don't think.
No.
And then again from Marie, we have, I had something that was exactly the same when I was in school, but we called it a braille and print. I hated that thing because the Epson printer that it was hooked up to almost always jammed. Then we hooked it up to a Canon printer and it worked a little better, but still, it was ridiculous. I was so glad when technology evolved a little bit more and we didn't have to have such bulky writing apparatus.
You know what? It was called that as well. It depends who you asked. The Brilliant Print. Yeah.
Yeah. She says, also fun fact, the Perkins School for the Blind was not the only organisation that made braillers.
That's right. There was another braille company, I think, called Stainsby or something like that. I've never seen one of those braillers, but the only thing we ever had in school were Perkins.
Mm. Then we have Tara, who says, I'm going to say the liver is the answer to the quiz question. I can understand why you would say that, because I thought that too.
So strange. I'm still baffled by that.
Yeah. And then she says, this is a fun episode. I have lots of memories from when I was younger as well. I did not start using a cane until I was in 3rd grade. I went to all public schools, nursery school, all the way up through high school. I knew I was different, but that never stopped me. I probably did most everything the other kids did, and sometimes more.
Yeah,
and then true. The last comment on YouTube is from John Pigstrong, our little friend, who we aren't quite sure who he is, but, you know, we love the comments. He said, it's the brain. And he also said, goat brain has 5 times as more cholesterol as the liver.
Oh, wow.
And then he ends the comment with apple.
Like an emoji?
No, just the word apple. Which I think is, you know, back
That's
to
proof
the,
he's
I like
listening.
apples.
That's proof he's listening.
He's definitely listening because he got the question right. There was also the message that you got from Aisling.
Oh, yes. We nearly forgot about that.
She said, hey, that was an interesting podcast episode. I went to a mainstream school.
Pretty much.
A mainstream school my whole life. In nursery school, I had one teacher who stayed with me, and she explained to me that I was partially sighted in primary and secondary school. I had people from the city council who came in to specifically support me. From the age of 5, I had a cane and a Perkins brailler. I also had a Perkins brailler at home for practice. Then at 9, I got given a braille taker.
See, I wasn't sure what she meant by that. I didn't know if it was like a mistake or something.
Maybe talker?
Oh, could be.
And after that, at 11, I got the braille note touch.
Yeah, this is quite a common device. I never had that in school because I was too old by the time that kicked in.
There was also someone in primary school who would come in to help me understand measurements. I was allowed to make anything I wanted with his help, so I made a Formula 1 racing car. I did all the measurements and he stuck all the parts together with super glue. That's so cool.
That is cool.
In my school, they had trays underneath the desks and my plastic braille clock stayed in there. I would get into class early so I could set up different times on the clock that I had learned, and I would memorize how they felt underneath my fingers.
Yes, yeah, can relate to that.
That's really cool.
Great comment as well.
Yeah,
Thanks,
you.
Aisling. Good. So you have questions. I'm going to try and have answers.
Well, we're moving on from when you first went to boarding school.
Right.
When you were 9.
Yeah, of all things.
Yeah.
That still scares you, doesn't it?
Yes. Because I just think 9 is still so little.
Yeah.
But, you know, it was what was best for you at the time. So you already sort of said about how you were excited, but obviously also scared.
That's right.
Nervous to be away from home for so long. What do you remember, if anything, about those the first week that you were there, I guess?
I remember quite a lot, actually, or at least I think I do, because memory's funny. It makes you think you remember things. What I remember is getting there was a chore. The day that we left, my mum, my dad, and my uncle Paul, we all went in a car. My dad drove us up. And before we left, I'm sure we went to see 2 people that I used to know really well. One of them was called Margaret. She had a son called Ricardo, who is a cousin of mine. Yeah, my Uncle Adrian's son. So I knew Margaret and used to stay with her lots. It was kind of like to say bye because we had to drive up in the evening. We also went... No, we didn't. I wanted to say we went to visit Anne, but no, I saw Anne another time. Anne is the lady that gave me the piano, by the way.
Yeah.
So that's what we did. We went to see Margaret, and then we got in the car and we got on the motorway. And this is pre-GPS and pre-good maps. And let me tell you, there were some arguments in that car. Directions, not a thing. My dad's, he'd driven me up there once for my week assessment. I don't mean like week as in strong, but week-long assessment. Mm-hmm. It was just him and I that time. So he thought he remembered the way. We ended up nearly in Wales, I think, at one point.
Jeez.
Lots of cussing. My mum wasn't a happy camper. I got there after everybody else had already settled in. This is black people travel. It was a whole thing. And what I remember about that trip, more than anything else, was that Janet Kay, Silly Games, was on a tape that was playing on repeat, on auto reverse. I don't know anything else on that tape, right? It would play the one side, it would flip over, it would play the other side, it would flip back. And I just remember that song was on that tape.
Wow.
So that song is embedded in my memory. It's a reggae song. You may know it, I don't know. It's a great song anyway.
I might know it if I heard it.
You'd know it if you heard it, absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, Janet Kay's Silly Games. And the thing is, it used to be a song my mum sang a lot. So, of course, it reminded me of her and always has done. And sometimes she would sing along to it when she wasn't cussing my dad. And sometimes she would not. But yeah, we get to that point in the tape. I'm like, oh, it's another one of them. So several hours and hours later, we get to the school. And finally, I can be excited. I was already tired by then. We'd stopped at a lot of petrol stations, blah, blah, I don't know. It was mad. And I meet the people I am going to be spending a lot of time with in my boarding house. I roomed with one guy, short name Sebi, right? Not short for Sebastian, though. Short for Sebahattin. Yeah. Sebahattin, Turkish name. Mm-hmm. Great guy. A lot of respect for him.
Was he, because you were the youngest, right?
Yeah.
So he wasn't, so how old was he at the time?
Either a few months or a year old. I can't remember, actually.
So he was round about the same age.
Yeah, we're all the same age. Yeah. No. Everybody was like, pre-teen kind of age. I would also, in that week, meet my lifelong friend, James Berry, who comments on here sometimes and listens sometimes. Mm-hmm. And a lot of other people too, some of which I see on Facebook every now and then, but haven't spoken to in ages. But yeah, James and I still in touch. You've even met James.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that week was like orientation week and we had lessons and everything. But I remember that we were guided by somebody who was there already, like who'd been there for a year or something. Or sometimes the house parents or teachers. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I do remember that because I got there so late, like later than dinner late, right? Oh. They dropped me off, they turned around, they left. I didn't really even have time to think about it at that point because it was a new place and it was exciting. And I did remember my way around the boarding house because it was the same boarding house I did my assessment in. So that was all right.
Yeah.
So I could go up and down the stairs. I could find, and I knew what room I was in. But I was hungry. So everybody's gone to bed. It's quiet in the house. It's exciting though. We'll wait for ages. I was talking to Sebi, getting to know him. And I was like, Sebi, I'm hungry. I'm going downstairs. Yeah, it's nearly midnight by this point. I go downstairs and I missed a few steps because, I thought I knew it, but I didn't know. I was a kid. And I fell down the last few steps and fell against the front door, because it was like an internal front door, to my house parents' house. Miss Calder, lovely Scottish lady. Yeah. So happy. She was wonderful. And I wanted to ring the bell anyway because I was like, can I have some toast? Now, normally you shouldn't do this. It's a school night the next day. She got out. She had a dog called Gypsy. I remember that. The dog started barking. She comes, who's that? What do you want? Kind of thing. She's like, yeah, it's Andre. I'm hungry. Can you help? I'm sure she sighed at me.
It's just so funny because like most little kids, especially being in a new environment, new people, new rules, like all of this stuff, would just get on with it. Would just stay in their room, stay quiet, just wait till the next day.
Oh, no,
but you being Mr. Confident, don't care, kind of
precocious
just get on with
child.
I don't know if it's even precocious. I think it's just that confidence of, well, I need something.
I did.
So I'm going to go and ask for it because why not?
It needed to be done. It just did.
It's just so funny. Like it's so the complete opposite of how I would have behaved.
Or Alice.
Yeah, actually.
So,
but yeah.
I stumbled down the stairs because they were more than I thought. And she opens up and she wasn't angry. She was actually very nice about it. She's like, all right, I understand. Only the once though. So it was me and Sebi because I said, look, Sebi, come down with me. I was a bit nervous. He didn't need anything, but he got some toast anyway. And then she packed us off to bed.
Aw.
Never ever forget that. That was the introduction to my Worcester years.
Yeah.
Absolutely mad. So yeah, orientation week, learning where things are, being taught by my first form tutor, Mrs. Johnson, very strict lady.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I say that. She was strict when I was 9. By the time I hit sixth form, she was really, really cool.
I think teachers are different with sixth formers, though.
Yeah,
Like,
but you've got a thing in your head and it's
Yeah.
really hard to get out of. But by the time we did, unchronologically, by the time I hit my sixth form, and she was teaching cooking at that point, she would find really cool Caribbean recipes for me to do. She was like your mum, actually, in that way.
Yeah.
She really loved her students. But when we were, young, she just seemed like the most harsh taskmaster ever. It's funny how
A lot of
age
teachers are
changes
like
you.
that, though. I think at the beginning, like at the beginning of the year, they'll be stricter to kind of get the kids into line and be respectful and make sure you listen and all of that.
Absolutely.
And then they kind of, ease up a bit.
So I think we had her, at least in my sixth form years, on Friday before lunch. So we'd make and take it away.
Ooh, nice.
And yeah, I'm sad. She gave me this one recipe that used coconut rice. And I think that's when my love of coconut rice started. Because if you, the podcast listeners, know anything about me, you'll know that I loathe coconut with a passion. It is disgustorous, right? But coconut rice is perfectly cromulent and a very nice thing.
Yeah.
So this recipe, and it filled like one of those, how we get the Chinese takeaway, those containers, to the brim. So I had a lot of this and I shared it. I didn't want to share it, but I shared it with James, I think. James, if you remember, you can probably still taste it. I can. It was great. But yeah, that was then. But in the early days, everybody seemed very formal and strict, and it kept you in line. And because it was a tiny school, I think we only had 120 students ever, right? The whole time I was there. No more than that anyway.
Yeah.
Everybody knew everybody, eventually. Not at first, of course.
Yeah.
But it was like a little community because every day you'd see the same people. You lived on campus. You didn't live off campus. And you got to know your way around and do those things. So, yeah, that's what I recall in a disjointed fashion.
So how did they teach you about where things were? Did they literally just take you around and this is here, this is there, or what's the process like with that?
They were quite big on independence, so they would kind of suggest, but not make you pair up with somebody who'd been there or who was partially sighted and who could see.
Okay.
Right? So for a bit, you'd be grab you by the shoulder and right, here's the classroom for this one.
Mm-hmm.
It was never like a formal training exercise.
Yeah.
And I think I mentioned this in the first episode, not last week, but the Memories for the Love of School, I think we called it,
Yeah.
way back in the day. That in the evenings, right, because it was a posh school, we did prep. It wasn't homework, it was prep. And it was done in the school building after tea, not dinner, tea. Very white, right? So you'd have your tea,
yeah,
and you'd then go and get your books from your classroom or from the schoolhouse. I think at those times we didn't take stuff away because there was no point, and we were young, so they were in our form classroom thing.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, if you were blind, you would grab a brailler as well, right? So you've got books under one arm, brailler in another hand maybe, or in the same hand, and you've got to go down the corridors and down the stairs too, because we didn't do our prep in quotes, always quotes, okay?
Yeah.
In the classrooms. At that time, at least for the first, I don't know if it was the first year or only 6 months because they thought it was a silly idea. Everybody congregated in a library, a big open space, and then you'd have a bunch of people supervise. But you can picture, right? Blind and partially sighted people carrying things, some blind people not knowing another blind person's there, and these braillers just crashing together in the hallways.
Well, that's kind of what
It
I
happened.
wondered, how do they navigate that?
How any of us have any knees or ankles left is honestly a miracle. I don't know why they did this. I don't know who thought of it and why they didn't just send the sixth formers up to supervise. There were more sixth formers than there were young classes anyway, so there was really no reason to do what they did. And it still baffles me. And you'd have to remember to grab all the books you needed in a go because you weren't allowed to go back and get anything. So that was the thing. But when they moved it to the more sensible method of doing prep in your own classroom, you could get anything you needed because it was obviously in the room with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was a dumb move and I still don't get it. But I do remember it. I remember the clash of the brailers going down the hallway, going down all the different sets of stairs. And they were quite wide corridors, so you could normally tell another blindie's coming. Move! But who was going to move? Who's going to move? Is it you or is it me? Did you go that way? Oh, look, I went the same way. It happened. And then it didn't. And that was fine.
Oh.
So that's one thing I really remember really well. On Sundays, the house parents would do life skills with us. So that was washing your uniforms, shoe polish, because we had to wear a set of school shoes, not just trainers, right? Everyone had uniform.
Yeah.
Tie-tying if needed. Make sure your tie is tied correctly. Yeah. Say that when you're tired. Tired of being tired. Good episode. Yeah. And stuff like this. And making sure that, you had to make your bed as well. You had to take off the sheets and make your bed. So all of those things, life skills on a Sunday. And you couldn't do anything else until you'd done those things. So no fun, no play. And at 9, obviously you wanted to do that. 9 and 10 and 11 as we were then. So all of that, very important.
Definitely.
Good stuff though. I look back and, it's important. Didn't like it at the time. Who does? But it needed to be done.
Yeah. Gotta learn.
Yeah. And all the washing machines that were brailled up with like the braille dynamo thing. So that's, we've got one in the house somewhere. It's where you print out the words on a sticky tape and you peel off the back and you stick it on things.
Yeah.
So all the washing machines had that kind of thing. And there was a laundry room downstairs away from the bedroom so it wasn't noisy. And there was a dryer and a washer next to each other. And then you could shut the door. And then there was a fire door that you could shut to make it even quieter. So the rest of the house wasn't disturbed by all that. There was a room for a phone box. And you could talk to your parents or, whoever you had money to ring. And in the first boarding house I was in, which was actually called Peggy Marks, all the boarding houses, if I remember, were named after head mistresses or headmasters of the school in times gone by. I think that's how it worked. So Peggy Marks, the first house I stayed in, I lost my train of thought. What was I going with that? What was I saying?
The phone?
Oh yeah, that was it. So the phone was like in a little office thing. So you could have privacy. So you'd shut the door, you'd make a call, and it was a proper phone box. Like, it wasn't just pick up and spend the school's money. No, you had to put coins in. And in the younger years, we were maybe given money by our parents, but we didn't get to hold on to it. There was a cabinet with a lock, and we were all told, a bit like the Hogwarts uniform, you have to bring a money box. You can hold on to the key, but the money box is locked up in the cabinet. So if you needed to make a call and you didn't have any change left on you, you'd have to get the house parent to get it open for you, and then you could, make your call and then put it back. Mm-hmm. Another reason to keep money, apart from because we couldn't leave campus at that time, we were too young, was for the coffee bar, or the tuck shop, as it was sometimes known. So nearby the house I was in was the leisure block. The leisure block contained the dining hall. You and I went in there briefly when we went there in 2008, because I was showing you all around the place. Down the corridor from the dining hall was this coffee bar. And I have dreamt about that place. I cannot tell you. It's weird. Especially in the summer. And I think it would open up at like 7:30, 8 o'clock each evening for a couple hours. And you could buy stuff. And they were licensed to sell stuff in there. And they had a fridge and everything behind there. And in the older years, if you wanted to, it was voluntary. You could be, the one who ran it. And
nice.
Yeah, and did things. I didn't do that, but I was bought from it. This is where my love of Brannigan crisps came from. Never had them anywhere else, only in Worcester's coffee bar.
No, I don't know. You don't really see them.
Amazon sell them in bulk, but that's it.
Yeah.
So, when you had money, you'd go to the coffee bar and you'd buy things and you'd hoard them and you'd bring them back to your room, keep them in. We had these underbed drawers on wheels. I nearly forgot about that. So each person had either 1 or 2 drawers, extra storage, and you pull it out and you had a big wooden panel thing with a hole. You lift it up like this, big desk thing. Mm-hmm. And you could store stuff inside. So that was cool. And it would hold cans of drink too, because I sold cans of drink there, chocolates, Twix, and everything. So it's quite fun, actually.
All the good stuff.
All the good stuff. And then occasionally, your parents would send you a care package of whatever it was. So that was also fun.
Aww.
Yeah. So each person, from what I remember, had a bed. It's not a prison. Underbed drawer, that's what they called it. And a chest of drawers and a wardrobe. And that was your lot. And then there were communal bathrooms and showers. So, yeah, that was how the boarding houses were, at least when I was younger.
Yeah.
It was quite fun. Looking back, just lots of random things, There were two things distinctive about Worcester, I think. There was the fountain, which was a good landmark because it let you know where the front of the school was, if it was turned on anyway. In the winter, it iced up, so they turned it off so the pipes didn't break.
Oh.
And it was a memorial fountain. I think it was in memory of somebody called Robin. I don't know whether they died on premises or something to do with the school anyway. And there was a bench near the fountain. And there was also the school clock, which went ding dong every quarter hour.
Oh, gosh.
And a single dong at the top of the hour. So you could hear that really miles away, actually, from the school. On a good day when the wind was right, you could hear that thing all over the place. And it was on top of the school building. So that was quite nice. And if you're ever on campus and you hear that, you just know it's a memory, If you ever have that and you've been somewhere and you hear a thing and it just takes you right back. It's beautiful. So yeah, that's kind of how we learnt things. But as for actually school learning, I suppose it was the way that you would do it too, but just with accessible books and things. So if you're thinking of, say, maths or geography, we would have tactile printouts of maps or charts done on there were two different systems. One of them was called a thermoform printer, which was when you melt plastic to very high temperatures and you put whatever it is underneath the thing you want to melt, right? So it makes an outline of it like a mold through the paper.
Okay.
And you could do this with Braille as well. Now, the problem with that, and you had a lot of thermoform books back in the early days, is that because it was plastic, if you had sweaty or sticky hands, yeah, I know, gross, it made it hard to read. And in the summer, hard to read. Yikes.
Yeah.
But, it worked. And there was another type of printing called Minolta printing. And I think that's just the name of the company now, because I'm older. But at the time, I just thought that was the type of printing. And there were two types of paper, Minolta paper, that I remember. One had a soft backing, like a smooth, glossy finish, and one didn't. And the one that didn't smell nice and wasn't nice to touch, and it left a nasty lingering aftertaste or after smell, right? And they were used for maps and everything. And the other one was a different type of paper, same machine, but actually had a genuinely nice smell. Weird chemicals. Yes, we were paper sniffers as kids. It happened. And so I remember those two types. And the glossier type was used in my later years. And the not glossy type, the rough type, was used in my earlier years. I wish I had saved some of this stuff to show you and the kids.
Yeah.
RNIB would probably have some, but I'd love to.
Did you have like talking
get some.
calculators?
Yes, actually, we did. All sorts of different types. Panasonic ones, Sharp ones, and random brand things that were quite odd. And later we had scientific calculators that had like a serial port on the back so you could plug it into a computer. All this kind of stuff. And I remember those, they were brand new at the time. They had membrane buttons and they talked. They had no screen at all. So the only way to use it, whether you were blind or sighted, was to listen to it.
Yeah.
They had a really good speaker though, I remember that. They had a headphone socket. Yeah. They were nice. And in chemistry, yeah, we had a BBC computer, if you remember those, in school. And it was connected to a set of scales. And when you weighed something on the scales and pressed one particular button, it would speak through the computer. So that was really cool.
Yeah.
And in cooking classes, we had something similar, but without the computer. You could still buy these, I'm pretty sure, scales from like RNIB, that when you weigh something, it tells you what you've weighed. We had a set in the cupboard when we met, but they died.
Yeah, I remember them.
So those were talking kitchen scales. The other ones were maybe more precise for scientific experiments or whatever. But yeah, we had some really cool equipment for the 90s. Like It just seemed so futuristic somehow. And there were 2 computer rooms, as I recall, side by side, where we learned typing and how to do emails. Yeah, we had email back then, shockingly. And all that sort of business as well. There were English classrooms, and there was a whole wing for science. So there was chemistry, physics, and biology side by side in a dedicated wing. There was cooking, as I say. We did drama as well. Actually, I remember doing some kind of play. It was a poem, I think, set to actions, if I remember. And it was in my first year, or maybe second. And it was done for parents. So I remember that there were rows and rows of seats. And I know my mum came up for it. And we would do this play set to actions. And you had to run around and make sure you didn't run into any other blind people and all this kind of thing. It was interesting. I don't remember what it was, but we did. Lots of random memories.
Open the floodgates.
Yeah. Obviously, we learnt music too.
Yeah.
Oh, dear. But you must question me more because I can't think of things.
Well, I don't know, because my questions are all just like how you were actually taught things, but you've kind of covered that, really. You know, how they taught you cooking and...
It was really fun looking back. Cooking was interesting, right? Because obviously stuff is hot in certain places.
Yeah.
There was a dedicated, custom kitchen that they had made. So you had aisles of counter space with cooking hobs and ovens built in, and sinks at the end of each aisle. Really cool idea.
So you had your own section?
Yeah, everybody had their own cooking section. It was a massive room with, I don't know how many cookers. Maybe 8, maybe more. At least that's how I remember it.
Yeah.
And memory's fuzzy. So we learned to prepare, we baked, we did all the things, hot and cold food. The burners weren't flat like we have in our house now. They were rings. Some were gas, some were electric. I'm pretty sure there was a mixture, you know. I couldn't swear to it, but I'm pretty sure. So we had to learn how to light gas. I'm almost certain of this. I could be wrong. Maybe that was just done at home with my mum. But yeah, there were things like that. And we learnt to grate cheese without grating your face off, because graters are a bitch.
Those are scary.
All sorts of things. And, you know, like the kids do now, you make it, you take it home, and you share it.
Yeah.
It was good fun. Really good fun. I think the most interesting and probably one of the most dangerous was the lunchroom. You'd pick up a tray, you pick up your cutlery, you slide a tray along a counter, you get served on a glass plate or, you know, like a normal plate, not plastic.
Yeah.
Right? And then you go and find a table without completely crunching into the back of somebody else.
Yeah, see that? I just find that so, it just seems crazy. You're just all wandering around. I mean, I know you know vaguely where you're going, but...
You just had to use your ears a hell of a lot. We managed it. I don't know what happened, but there was one day I particularly remember where there must have been about 7 different plate drops. And it wasn't on purpose. It was just one of those days. Never seen anything like it. Smash. Oh, another one. Another one bit the dust. And after every drop, the whole room would cheer. Like when you land a plane.
People do that in restaurants.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
It was just one of those days. No one knows why that particular day. It wasn't even the carpet or anything different about the room or anything.
It was a full moon.
It could have been a full moon.
Everybody
plate drop, not mic drop.
Yeah.
So sometimes if teachers were there and they saw you going to run into difficulty, they would jump up and help you. Sometimes
you would hope, yeah.
You'd hope, yeah. And I remember, I didn't tell you about this, if I did, it was in the last episode, about CSVs. CSVs were community service volunteers, often from New Zealand or Australia on a gap year, sometimes from Canada as well.
Okay.
And we had one amazing lady from Japan when I was in year, I don't know, maybe 8, 9, 10. She was there for one of the years anyway. She introduced me to seaweed. Eatable seaweed. Edible seaweed. It was nice. So CSVs were in the dining rooms, and there was a CSV for each of the boarding houses. And if they were around, they would also take you and help you.
Yeah.
And from what I remember, because when I went back there I can't remember, I think I was there in 2019 or 2020 for a day. they still had CSVs, which is great because it's house parents can only be so many places.
Yeah.
So these young people were there to kind of be middle people, and also they were closer to us in age, so it was kind of relatable as well. Helped us to feel like we were seen, if you'll pardon the pun. So that was cool.
Yeah.
Round the back of the school, big playing field, football pitch, and a trampoline, outdoor trampoline.
Nice.
And the school had our own swimming pool. Dedicated building for a pool, which was lots of fun. I quite enjoyed the swimming lessons. It was not heated, but it wasn't cold. And it was, proper chlorinated. There were boys and girls changing rooms and showers and everything. And then you walk through like a dip in the floor, which is a foot bath, with some cold water in just to rinse your feet, and then you jump in the pool. Yeah. They even had a springboard and a diving board at one end, at the deep end. And it wasn't a full-length Olympic pool, from what I remember. It was a bit shorter, but it was good enough for lessons. Like, you could be loads of you in a pool, like massive amounts, and not bump into anybody.
Yeah.
And it was so cool because, a lot of other schools, you'd have to book a pool or pay for it.
Yeah.
We just had it on site.
No, that is really cool.
Being a boarding school, of course, we had an on-site doctor's surgery as well.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Nurses were there, trained nurses. And these were the same people that did our weighing and measuring like you do for kids, and also gave us injections. They were licensed to do that proper. So we didn't have to leave campus for that either. I mean, you've got a bunch of kids, right, in a big place for a long time. You're going to get sick. So it made sense for them to have somebody there that you could go to.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose all schools have a school nurse or somebody that's medically trained. So I suppose,
But it was cool. Sense. And it was, properly kitted out. So it was their own set of rooms that they had there. There were hospital beds, proper, adjustable, really good.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it wasn't just like a crappy outfit or anything. It was really very interesting.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of any other sort of specialist/bespoke things we had. We had a gym.
Oh.
Yeah, we had a school gym. And that was fun because on the weekends, when I was older anyway, I would go in there with my remote control race car and I would run the car around.
To go in there and use the gym equipment. And
none of that. I would go in there with the race car and sit in the middle of the floor, and I could drive it all around me in massive circles. Good fun. I mean, I would occasionally play goalball, which is a blind sport specifically, with friends in there. I got quite good at that. I did attend some tournaments and what have you. That was good. And in later years still, I did rifle shooting, which sounds really dangerous, although if you're in America, probably quite standard. But I'm talking air rifle shooting particularly. I didn't shoot at my fellow blind students. I mean, no. It would have got me kicked out, I think. So we had a rifle with a scope on it, and that converted the light into sound. This is called like a light probe. And the higher pitch the sound, the closer to the center of the bullseye you are. So there was a normal cardboard target at the end, and you would stand steady and shoot lead pellets at this thing. I even have medals for this. I attended some ceremonies and things, and I won some awards, and they're in the cupboard somewhere.
Loads of awards.
Yeah.
Loads of trophies.
Over the years.
Yeah.
Done quite a lot of. I was kind of sporty-ish as a kid, or more athletic anyway. So yeah, I went to the Netherlands, and did a few of these shooting competitions, and I got double gold one year. So that's gold for myself, like a personal gold, and gold for the country. So I came back with 2 medals that year. It was great fun. I really enjoyed the rifle shooting. I think it was called small bore rifle shooting, as memory serves. So, boarding school, a lot of people say it sucked, or in the US, as I say, they call it Braille jail a lot. Their schools don't seem to be as fun or fully featured as ours, from what I can tell. I mean, I could be wrong. But I've only ever heard bad things from those. Not good, excited, happy people. I look back on my school years mostly with fondness, truth be told.
Yeah.
I quite enjoyed it.
Was there like a way that they prepared you for the end? Like for when you were moving, like leaving there to go on to college?
Yeah.
Was there anything you can think of that they did specifically to prepare you for that?
I am pretty sure, and it's weird because even though that's closer to me in time than pretty much everything else I've talked about, short-term memory is weird. Long-term memory is
Well, the just might not have been
More long-term.
anything significant, I guess.
They talked to me about where I was going and why I picked that place, I'm pretty sure. Because I don't know how I landed on RNC, Royal National College in Hereford, because I went there for 2 years after Worcester. So from 2000 to 2002. But that's where I ended up, along with James Berry as well. So we stayed together, which was good. I can't remember who talked to me about that place and why I decided to pick that place, but we definitely had those conversations. Because otherwise I would have gone, I don't know, and maybe done nothing. But that didn't happen. So somehow it happened, and I remember going on an assessment with James as well, because, well, if we were both going to go, why not go together? So we both went on some assessment to Hereford during our sixth form year together. And they put us up in some hotel, I think, overnight, and we watched some random film on Channel 5. That's what I remember. Yeah.
Nice.
And I know it's supposed to come next week, but I felt RNC in a way, in terms of mobility training and everything, was a bit of a step back in terms of Worcester.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because Worcester in my sixth form, you had to cook all your evening meals on the weekends, all your meals on the weekends, right? The dining hall was never open. On Friday nights it was, but you had to do your own stuff Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
But in RNC, you didn't. The refectory, as it was known then, was open anytime. Well,
Right.
you know, set
So
breakfast,
you just
lunch.
relied on that
Yes.
the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah, you did. And James and I both agreed it was a bit of a step back in the way. And the cooking facility, they had cooking facilities in RNC in the halls of residence. I was trying to remember the word. But they were basically unused, not well maintained, and there wasn't much in the way of like accoutrements to use. Whereas Worcester's houses were fully stocked. You know, a proper working fridge, really good pots and pans, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I remember the first weekend James and I were there, we went looking for the same kind of thing, thinking, oh, that's going to be the same. It wasn't. And it was a surprise to us. They also made you use a cane all around RNC in
really?
buildings on the grounds. Worcester did not. They said cane is for off campus. And they were quite adamant about it in a way. And it made us quite independent, maybe free-spirited travelers indoors, and helped with spatial awareness. Be spatially aware. A fun reference from a TV show that we both love.
Yeah.
So if you used your ears, and if they worked well enough, you could walk down the middle of a corridor without even trailing the wall and know where your classroom was. That was me back in the day. I used to power walk. You should have seen me. I was a man on a mission. And I knew where every door was.
I can believe it.
You can well believe it, can't you? That's how I navigated back then. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
A lot of fun. So yeah, I left Worcester, went to RNC, which was a few stops down the same train line, and nearly got off the wrong stop a handful of times, I can tell you. But apparently that's for another day.
It's for next week. Next week will be college uni.
Let me tell you a few other things as I remember them, because Worcester in independence was a big deal. Gus. Let me tell you about Gus. Gus Angus was one of, I would say, 2 or 3 people that was big on outdoors and independence being outdoors. Gus would take you tandem biking on weekends. He would come in on the weekends even though he didn't have to be there, and he would take time out of his day.
Gus? Like a teacher or a helper?
He was, I don't know what his title was, but he was like the outdoors guy.
Okay.
He was so cool. So cool. And we did a few school trips, like to a place in Hereford called Dindor. Dindor was a big field, basically, and you put up tents, and you cooked on the fire, right? And so Gus would hire a minibus for a week, and I know we did this for the first week of one of our school years. I don't remember what year it was, maybe like, I was 15, so however old I would have been then. Maybe that was year 10 or something, or 11, I don't know.
Yeah, probably year 10.
And we went there a few times over the years, but this was one year. So we get in the bus, we drive all the way to Hereford. We set up big tents, we cook on the fire. And there was a welly wanging competition. Yes, that's right. It's a big bucket at the end of the field. You've got to throw in a welly You get 15 points if you make it in the bucket.
Wow.
Good fun. We would cook stuff over the fire.
Yeah.
We did kayaking. Excuse me. We did kayaking and rowing and all this kind of stuff on a lake. I remember once they dropped us off far from civilization in the school bus. They had boats in the back of the bus, and there was a bunch of us, and they're like, right, here's a lake. You've got to row this way back to civilization. Of course, we needed partial sighted people to do that. So the partials were at the front of the boat, blindies in the back. Wow. Row back to where we started.
That's crazy.
Just remember, this is pre-mobile phone.
Yeah.
Right? This happened.
Air tags, any of that stuff.
This happened. And I'm here to talk about it. So obviously we didn't drown in the lake, but we managed to make it back.
There were no staff?
Nope.
Oh my God.
Nope.
Unless, I mean, maybe they were. They were like
out
slowly
of sight, out of mind.
Walking like along the bank, keeping an eye on you
Could
guys.
well be. But we couldn't, well, they couldn't see them. I mean, you know, they've got close vision, so anything could happen. But we were just told, right, go back.
Oh my gosh.
A lot of fun.
Yeah.
You're in the middle of the lake. It's really quiet. There's the occasional duck. And you're just rowing down the middle of the lake. Crazy. Crazy stuff.
Yeah.
We were given a film canister, right? Inside the film canister were matches. In the lid of the film canister, glued to it, was the match striker.
Yeah.
So if you needed matches, you needed a light, and we were given meth burners.
Oh my God.
I'm serious. It was given a ration pack.
Oh, for the 90s.
Sealed ration pack.
Oh, early 2000s that would have been, wouldn't it?
Late 90s.
Okay, then the 90s, yeah.
Yeah, this is 90s tech right here.
I feel like the 90s were different.
So we were given ration packs, and you had to cook, and then you had to rinse your stuff downstream. We were given a massive backpack with a tent in it. All this, sleeping bag. And you had to get it all back in, do the things proper. Like, blind or not, they were making you do this, and it was great.
And did all the other kids, were they just as like capable as you were? Like, did they all just get on with it, enjoy it? Or did you have some that had...
I don't know if I was necessarily capable. I didn't necessarily enjoy all the outdoorsing. I enjoyed all the sort of other stuff like cooking over a fire and stuff.
Yeah.
I hate sleeping in the bloody cold in a tent. That can just go do one. But the rowing part and all that part was fun to me. I enjoyed that. I will say.
But I mean more like, were there other kids that maybe had needed extra help?
Oh, probably. I can't say I remember though. Like nothing stood out.
Okay.
At that time, I think it's different now. I think Worcester accepts more people with sort of different needs.
Yeah.
Like wheelchair and things. We had a couple of wheelchair students, but most of them were not. I think most people were, I don't know how to put it, like almost quote unquote normally blind. I don't know.
So they didn't have extra, like additional needs?
No, not really.
Or
and I say normally in air quotes. I don't really believe in that kind of nomenclature, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think that meant that they could do different things than they might do now.
Yeah, sure.
For example. But yeah, it was really interesting. We had a lot of fun. And I think back to those days, honestly, quite happily. Missed home. And there were times when I just be like, oh God, I want to go home.
Yeah.
And occasionally I did. I know there are at least 1 or 2 weekends where I would just manage to get a ticket. I didn't ever pay for my ticket, by the way. It was all done through the local authority. So I just had to tell them in advance, I think, if I needed to go home for some family event or for a reason. Otherwise, you were given tickets at the beginning and end of term, half term, and you do that. Other parents would pick them up, and sometimes my dad would take me home for the weekend, which was fun. So on the Friday, he would drive. He'd do his normal work day. He worked in the school too, so he couldn't leave early.
Yeah.
So he worked in the school. He would maybe get a bite to eat, jump in the car on the motorway up the M5 to Worcester, pick me up for about sort of 8:30, back in the car again, and we're home by like 10:30, 11 sometimes because it's London traffic.
Yeah.
And then we'd spend the day together doing whatever, and then Sunday afternoon back on the road again, and then he dropped me off back on the road again. So the poor man must have done like 8-10 hours of travel in a weekend just for his son.
Yeah, but you do that for your kids.
Man, there were some great times. Some real great times. And because, again, pre-phones, right? You wouldn't always know where I would be on campus. So he'd go all over campus.
He'd have to come find you.
Like, sometimes you go to the main building, reception is still
funny.
open if you're lucky. Okay, he's not there. Go to my boarding house, he's not there. He's with James in his boarding house. They knew James. Yeah, my dad and James know each other since I was 9, so, easy to find.
Yeah.
You'd knock the door, you'd walk in. Onge, it's Dad.
Oh.
Bag was packed. We'd
Ready
talk
to
for a
go.
bit. Off we go. Absolutely crazy memories. Crazy stuff. But fun. What did I miss?
I don't think you've missed anything.
I probably
No?
missed a ton.
No.
I know I missed something from last week, though, didn't I? I was asking you to remind me of my trips on the bus.
Oh, when you went to the play centre thing? What was it called?
Oh, yeah, that was 2 things. Right.
Oh.
So 2 different things from last week's episode that I forgot
Yeah.
is that the school bus, as I said, would beep and pick you up outside the door.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I got outside and I wasn't feeling well like Jake. And they were like, yeah, sure. And I just puked all over the stairs.
Oh.
My mum came out with me that day. She doesn't always come out with me, or didn't, used to, right? If she was busy, like, I heard the beep, you're fine. So I would go out and they would be at the top of my basement steps.
Yeah.
But for some reason, this time she came out, maybe to say hi to them or to talk to them. And I said, Mum, I'm really not feeling well. She's like, yeah, sure. Oh boy, was I not. So the bus just turned around and went away. Like, couldn't go into school. I was fine. A bit like Jake, you're once sick and you're fine. But I just remember that day specifically. A few other things I remember about that. So back in the 80s, this is the 80s now, not 90s, they were called escorts. Different terminology back then. So the people that helped you on and off the bus escorted you. Thus, they were escorts. And we had 2 throughout the time I was at John Eyre. It was Monica Finn, Miss Finn, or Doreen Bowen. Both very nice people. You get to know them very well because you're on the bus with them for hours each day, in traffic, out of traffic, dropping off and picking up all these people. So that was during the school period. Now, during the school holidays, my mum needed to, work and do things. I was sent to Chelsea Adventure Playground. Similar kind of system, but different bus, different people.
Yeah.
And I used to mess with them. And I don't know why I did this. Maybe I was just bored. But I remember once or twice, I'd get to my area and I said, yeah, so my house is whatever it was. And it wouldn't be the right house. So they would take me and knock on some random person's door and said, here's your son. And someday some woman's like, that's not my son. Do you sure you live here? I say, yeah. No. So they dropped off somebody else and then came back and then dropped me in the right place. That was because, see, Miss Finn would have known that's not my house. She dropped me off every day. But someone new did not. I don't know why I wanted to be kidnapped.
Honestly.
It's a whole thing. I never told my mum.
No. I can't imagine she would have been impressed.
I just thought it was interesting. Yeah. I don't know what children do strange things. Oh dear. So back to modern times. In the latter few years of my schooling, well, I suppose we should go back a bit first. In the early years of my schooling, I know I'm a bouncy boy, we would get help on and off the train, right? So we'd have a school train that we would all take. Anybody going to London, this is where you congregate. So we'd have a minibus to the station. We'd all stand on Worcester Shrub Hill station, waiting for the train. And then a gaggle of blindies would jump on this train, or a babble of blindies. And we'd all take up like an entire bloody carriage, us and the teacher. Normally the teacher went with us because they wanted to go to London.
Yeah.
And then parents would pick us up. In the latter years, like sixth form and year 11 and 12, we just went after school, or there was always the designated minibus on a Saturday morning, right? Schools finished Fridays, so you could leave any time after school on Friday if you wanted. You had your ticket by then. Teachers had them for you in the early days. And also coming back as well. You'd meet at a certain time at Paddington Station and the teachers had your tickets, or your parents did, and they'd give to the teachers.
Yeah.
This is when we were much younger. And then, later years, they stopped sending teachers down with parents, maybe because of budget cuts and whatever crap, you know how it goes. So we would just make our own way up. And so what you try and do was coordinate with a friend. By then we had phones because we were less primitive. And so you'd see when your friend was going up or someone you liked, and you'd coordinate like, yeah, I'm coming into Paddington at this time, so we'll get on this train. And I told Jake met Joe. Joe is a guy that worked at Paddington and might even still do. He was there last time I went. And he has worked there since, I think, 1992 when I started going. And he's one of the staff that works at Paddington. And he got to know my mum. He's a Nigerian guy. He fancied my mum hard. Right? So you get on off the train, Joe would be there. Joe was there. Joe was there. So one time Jake and I went to Paddington for something, Joe was there. So he still remembered me.
Yeah.
And he remembered me because he remembered my mum.
Wow.
Joe once quit work. One time we came back from Worcester. My mum picked me up at Paddington and he took us out for McDonald's.
Oh, wow.
That was his thing. He decided he was taking me and my mum out for McDonald's. And then we went home.
Way
Free
to
lunch.
Get to your mum's heart.
Oh, yeah.
Get them
Free lunch. Crazy, crazy times. Right.
Funny.
I've waffled more than enough today. So why don't you tell me a Stroonge news story?
All right, then. So you actually brought this story to my attention.
Oh, good.
And it is about how urban birds are more scared of women than of men.
Charlie, are you listening?
Yeah, see, the birds are more scared of you than you are of them. So scientists have done experiments and tested this theory. So urban birds like pigeons, sparrows, magpies, they're more scared of women. When they did these tests, men were able to approach the birds and get a meter closer than women were.
That's so interesting, isn't it?
And in the published studies, the researchers found that the birds were able to identify someone's gender and allow the men to get closer, but they can't figure out why. So there doesn't seem to be an actual reason as to why they have more of a fear of women.
Because women are fearsome creatures.
Yeah, definitely. Out of the two, definitely be more scared of women.
Yeah, damn it.
No. So they used male and female participants matched in height, clothing, walking in a straight line in urban parks and green spaces. And the majority of the birds, were more scared of women. I don't know whether you can say more scared or just less scared of the men, maybe.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah, that works too.
But they are, they're not sure if it's to do with like pheromones or body shape or gait. They need to do more research, but we just thought that was strangely interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially considering my sister, who has a huge fear of birds.
What do you call that? Birdophobia? Tweetophobia?
Hold on.
Although that's a fear of Twitter. Fear of Twitter.
Ornithobia.
Oh yeah, weird one. Makes no sense.
Well, what is it?
Ornithology?
Yeah,
Is that the study of birds? I think so.
could be.
I forget.
I don't know. Anyway, either way, they're more scared of us.
Well, you win.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, Worcester had horses.
Oh, nice.
Just free roaming in the field.
That's really nice.
Hello, horse.
I'd like that.
Next to the outdoor football pitch.
Mm,
Yep, just horses.
That's really cool.
Oh dear. You'd be kicking the ball, you hear like, oh look, horse. Right next to you. Funny old day.
Yeah.
So that's my middle years. My formative years, some would say. Great fun. Lots of crazy memories that I'm probably dream about now, because that's what happens. You talk about it, it comes up again. Oh dear. So many experiences I didn't even touch on, like cooking during sixth form. One time, James and I were supposed to be cooking a long garlic bread roll. It wasn't. It was just plain French bread. Waste of time in the oven. We were both gutted.
Oh. Just slap some butter on it, it'll be fine.
Yeah. But we were so looking forward to that.
No.
Those were the days, man. Those were the days. Oh, dear. And, you know, it really comes to something when you order from a takeaway so much that they know you by name and by sight. Yeah. That happened.
Oh, dear.
That happened as well.
Yeah, I bet.
Well, before you're sick of my name and the sight of me,
No.
I will leave you all to it. We will leave you all to it. And we hope you found this somewhat entertaining, I guess. I hope so. Honestly, boarding school can be crazy. Love to hear about your school memories, boarding or otherwise. Do tell us some of the most unusual things you did, because I think pretty much everybody in a school has some unusual story to tell. I'd love to hear about it. And if you'd like to listen to these early, become a what?
A member?
On?
YouTube?
Please do. It helps. And what else can they do? Not members, but just people.
They can like?
Uh-huh.
I don't know what the current terminology is for it. Like something, subscribe.
Like, subscribe, and share. That
Like,
will do.
subscribe and share. There you go.
LSS. Do the LSS.
Okay.
And tell your friends about StroongeCast.
Yes.
Because you little listeners are great. But maybe we can have a few other fun people come along for the ride as well. That would be wonderful. Just like you are wonderful. But keep being wonderful for another weekend. Until then.
Bye.
You can do it by yourself.